Thank you. Welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission, October 3rd, 2018 2018 meeting. We have Mr. Lesser, Miss Hurd, Mr. Leggett, Sandy, Miss Slavin, and Agent Dave Bichette.
That came out hard, huh?
I know that did. God, that came out hard. Boy, Rob, okay, we got it.
You did good, though.
We have 3 hearings that have asked to be continued. Is there anybody here for the Greg Carey Clean Energy Collective hearing? Seeing none, they asked to be continued until December 5th.
So moved.
I have a motion?
Second.
I have a second. Ms. Hurd, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400, continued until December 5th. Greg Osmond has asked for a continuance until 12/19. Is there anybody here for that hearing? Seeing none,
Move to continue to 12/19.
I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Ms. Hurd, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, continued until December 19th. South Coast Hospitals Group hasn't asked, but they're not here, and we can continue until the next meeting, which is 10/17.
Anybody here for that?
Anybody here for that, South Coast? Seeing none,
Motion continue to 10/17.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, continued in 10/17. The next continued hearing is Kenneth Keegan, in care of Bracken Engineering. Anybody forward for that project, please come forward and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Mullaney from Bracken Engineering.
Thank you. Mr. Pichette, please. Is this a new plan?
Yes.
Okay, can you two share down there?
I'll need that one. You will just pass me.
Yeah, I got one.
Do you have the details on the salt marsh?
Yes, I have. You want me to hand those out?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the project site is at 35 East Boulevard, and this application is for a response to an enforcement order that was issued for some unpermitted placement of trap rock on the eroding coastal bank at the site. So the project involves the removal of that trap rock and the construction of a stone revetment along the coastal bank and within the flood zone. There were some additional features that were placed on the site plan to be included as part of the project, which included creating some parking areas. At the last meeting, the board's consensus was that those areas should be reduced and only be to what had been previously approved under a different order of conditions instead of expanding it as was proposed. The revised plan we have in front of us tonight still does not reflect what the commission had requested, so I cannot recommend approval of what we have in front of us at this point. There was also some discussion about some restoration of some altered salt marsh at the site. There is a detail that's been passed out relative to that. We had not had a chance to really sit down and go over that and what the extent of the restoration area should really be. So again, I would say that that, in my opinion, is not at a point where we should be making a decision on. So unfortunately, again, I would have to recommend that we either continue the hearing to get the revised plan to what the board was requesting, or if the applicant does not wish to continue, then I would have to recommend the approval of the stone revetment, but not approve the other requested features. So that's sort of where things stand at this point.
Questions on the board, Rob?
I do.
Yes.
I have a question on this catch basin. You know, when I went around town this week, I saw a number of catch basins which have never been cleaned out. So they really don't do the job, but people don't seem to mind. You know, they let it go. And so I'm wondering, is there any way that the board can say, you know, it's got to be cleaned out every 3 years, every 5 years? I don't know how that goes, David. So perhaps you could tell me.
Yeah, certainly if the board approves a feature, they can condition it to be cleaned at whatever interval they wish.
What would be a proper interval for a catch basin?
Well, it depends on the use. For something like that, it's not going to need to be cleaned as often as one that's in a busy street, but still, you want to do it at least twice a year, I would say.
Or even every other year.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
you know, twice a year's a lot. I don't think you'll get it done, but
Yeah, but at first, you're not going to really know how much it might need to be cleaned until you see it in operation. Then you could adjust the schedule afterwards.
that's something you would do then? You would go and you'd observe it? And then
Right.
go from there?
I'm not recommending that that even be put in anyway, so.
I think it should be put in.
Joe, did you have Alyssa, did you have anything else?
No.
Joe?
No, I'm going to agree with David. This is going to have to
Yeah.
be continued.
I am disappointed that all of a sudden we have paved parking area. And to me, the proposed gravel trench drain around the house was much bigger than I even thought we were talking about.
Yeah.
So what we have, is there anybody in the audience? Oh, sorry. Brendan, would you like to speak to the project? Sorry, I
Yes.
forgot to ask you earlier. I apologize.
It's okay, thank you. So just to briefly go over the revisions to the plan since the last time we were here. There was discussion about having a landscaped area and reducing the parking areas. These actually are proposed as pervious paver parking areas, so it's not, we're not proposing asphalt or a impervious surface. Both of these parking areas are slightly larger than the previously approved footprints, but in my opinion, they're only moderately larger. You can see they extend slightly further into the property. The reasoning for that was we felt that the other parking areas were not large enough to adequately get vehicles off the street, especially during snow events when the area was going to have to be plowed. The vehicles would have to be extend out into the road or parked on the road based on the size of those other approved areas. We did show the whole central portion of the parking area as a infiltration/landscape area, so both of the raised pervious parking areas, which will be able to infiltrate stormwater, will also be pitched towards the center, and we're going to have landscaping and a catch basin in that central portion that will collect all the stormwater generated from these parking areas. The gravel trench around the house was put there for a couple of reasons. The 4 foot in diameter, we actually moved the wall back slightly in order to allow 4 feet just for adequate passage around the house. And after reviewing the building code and the current site features, the building code requires that a lot is pitched away from a foundation a certain elevation over the first 10 feet. It's actually 6 inches over the first 10 feet. And the building code states that in an exception where lot lines, walls, slopes, or other physical barriers prohibit that fall within 10 feet, drains or swales shall be constructed to ensure drainage away from the structure. So the reason that we have this swale area here is so that we don't cause a flooding issue in the house during a storm event. The reason we have the wall holding back the proposed raised parking area and landscape area is to have a separation between those and attempt to keep all the stormwater up in the northern portion of the property and remove the possibility of that flowing either down towards the house or down towards Broad Cove. So the intent of this design is to capture and infiltrate all stormwater that is generated in this section of the site and also keep Mr. Keegan's house from having any potential flooding issues during storm events. Those were the basic, the a nutshell of the revisions that we made since the last hearing.
The, any questions, any additional questions based on those comments?
Could I have a question?
Yes.
How many cars are you planning to park here? These are pretty big, 30 feet.
There would be a potential to have 2 vehicles per dwelling. Mr. Keegan currently has a tenant in one of the structures, and so the thought is that there would be potentially 2 vehicles if there's 2 people living in each of the houses. There are 2 dwellings on the site.
Do you have the dimensions of the proposed walkway? Or did I miss it?
The overall dimensions of
Yeah.
the brick
this is
walk?
The proposed walk.
Yeah, it's 3 feet wide, and it's approximately 29 feet long.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm late.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak for this project? Please identify yourself when you're seated.
Bruce Hutchins, 37 East Boulevard, neighbor. I favor the project as it will enhance the property, his property, as well as I would think the neighborhood. I am in favor of him getting some sort of a drainage system or leach system. Again, to keep the water away from Broad Cove to his house, and probably, perhaps, a little bit away from our house. But I think the one thing that Ken has never experienced is a winter at 37, 35, because as most of you know, there is a triangle intersection of East Boulevard and the main street going into Onset, and the snowplow always plows it in front of his property. So he will be faced with additional water coming off as it melts. That succinctly is my opinion. Any questions?
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak for the project? Is there anybody who'd like to speak against the project? Kenny, is anything to add? We
Super
have new
nervous.
plans in front of us.
Just super nervous. Please and thank you.
The, Mr. Bichette has asked that the plan be reconsidered. This is not what we talked about at the last meeting. Would you like to let Mr. Keegan know your comments?
Sure, yeah. Basically, as I had stated at the last meeting, and it was the consensus of the board at the time, was that they wanted to see the parking areas limited to what was previously approved. So that's what we were expecting to see on the revised plan, and that's obviously not what's been submitted. So the other thing was the trench area around the house is much bigger than, again, what I think the commission was envisioning. And there was also some discussion about salt marsh restoration, which isn't really included on the plan. We do have a detail, but we didn't get a chance to really go over that to sort of determine where the extent of that should be. So for all of those reasons, I have recommended that this be continued so that we can try to get that plan squared away as to what the way the commission had requested it to be.
Right. I will say that, I understand I'm a landscape contractor, and it is my, my professional opinion of, I handle water and elevations. I don't think there's any other way to handle the situation in front of that house and between the house and the road. I've tried to look at other opportunities or other options in between the house and the road. The elevation change is just too much. And what I was thinking about with the approved parking areas, which are shown on the plan, if we do lower the grade there, like suggested in one of the meetings, to, alleviate the house being buried, that'll create almost a cliff on these pre-approved parking spaces, which you can barely fit one car, never mind two. When they come off, they're gonna fall off the little wall there. That's why I'd like to propose the landscape area, so at least it's all on one level, and when someone steps out, they have accurate room to open the doors and get out. I can try to come up with, and I've worked with Brandon on another option behind the house. In my professional opinion, there is none. The only option is to fix the problem or live with the problem. And this is, I feel like this is the only option behind the house.
If I may just add through the chair that if the pre-approved parking areas are constructed as they were approved, that still leaves basically a gully or a swale right in between those two that will direct water, directly at Mr. Keegan's house and eventually down into Broad Cove. The proposal that you have in front of you that we would respectfully request consideration on will alleviate that water from reaching both his house and ultimately the cove. And almost all stormwater that's generated both off of East Boulevard in that general proximity and through these parking areas.
And something I didn't actually think about, and Mr. Hutchins brought up, was the snow. I'm a snow contractor. I have, a dozen trucks on multiple towns, backhoes and machines, and I didn't even think about that. When that snow is in front of my house, and let's say it rains, as it often does, like last year when we get some snow and then it rains, it's gonna funnel right into my house. Just the house, it's in between. I'm just talking about the green area, because that is right at where the triangle is. During a heavy rain, I already had water in my house this year. That's why I had to get it off. There's no doubt in my mind that it's a big problem.
Well, I think one of the things the commission had discussed was having a trench around the foundation like you've already kind of dug out, but it doesn't necessarily need to be 4 feet wide. It can be just the width that you have it as it is. And in terms of runoff and so forth, we're hearing discussion as though there's torrents of water coming down there. You're talking about an area that's only 10 to 12 feet wide.
In snowbanks, that can be huge.
Right, but I'm saying in general,
is 40 feet of road.
Right, in general area though, not considering a snow event, you're really not generating much volume of water at all in that area. So I'm just not seeing the need for all these features.
During the summer.
And the other problem is, what you have to realize is you bought a site with limitations.
I understand, and that's
one of the problems.
Meeting here, I am trying to improve it, and I'm trying to abide by the rules, but
you're not trying to abide by the rules. That's the problem.
I understand, Dave. I'm just saying that there is no other option to fixing this issue, and basically you're telling me that I have to live with my house underground, and that the water is going to...
No, we're not telling you that. We're saying you can have the trench, it just can't be...
It will not work. I promise you, in my professional opinion, and I've brought in others, and maybe we can talk to the engineer who's more qualified than I and has, a qualification. Brandon, is there another option you can possibly think of?
With the current layout of the site, I think that what we have proposed will alleviate all of these issues, and we have proposed the landscape area as had been discussed at the last meeting. From my recollection of it, the commission had asked to see some details regarding that, and that's why we put that in the middle. As I believe was stated at the last hearing, these houses, based on the assessor's record, have been there for almost 150 years. I think it said... was it 1870 when they were constructed? So I completely understand that, the current rules and why we have them. But we have, a long-standing site, and we're just trying to make some improvements in order to mitigate for some of the problems that the site is facing, and while still respecting the rules to the maximum extent practicable.
And it's not a parking area. We did change. We've made a lot of change. I'm trying to comply and do whatever the commission puts forward, but everything else seemed to work, and it's not problematic to function, but to solve this problem, there isn't many options. And it's not a paved area, it's going to be a landscape. So I'm confused myself, and you don't need to answer me, I don't really seek the answers. It's not a very large expansion onto the parking areas, it's just a leveling and an improvement of the areas. I don't really think, I mean, my question is, what are we doing that is negative to the area?
Disturbing the 30-foot no-work zone. You have lawn there, and you're trying to put a 2-foot plus or minus foot landscape retaining wall all the way around the back of your property, correct? All around the proposed parking area? Am I reading the?
That's correct.
And you want to put pervious pavers for two existing driveways, install a landscape area between those two driveways in which they are pitched toward the landscape area, retain a 4-foot wide rock gravel trench around one of the two homes. Is it possible to come back with a plan with the existing approved parking areas on it? This is so busy, I can no longer find where the original parking, I can see them, but I can hardly see them, as to why they feel it's going to create a drop-off area? Is that what you said?
The house is, yeah, the house is buried right now, so to alleviate that soil, we'd have to get it, off the house and then retain it. And
Yeah,
when you
and
build that up, it's going to lower. I mean, even now, it keeps washing in.
Well,
It's
we
a big
talked about
drop.
putting a retaining wall close around the house to prevent more soil from collecting around it, but I don't think it was ever intended to be a 4-foot wide gravelled area.
I think that having a shorter basin will allow more water to possibly go into the house during. I don't think a shorter swale would suffice during. I understand we're not talking just one particular time of the year, but since Mr. Hutchins mentioned the snow, it's on my mind. That's kind of what I'm thinking of right now, and I know how much runoff can happen. I'd like to alleviate any issues for all 12 months of the year, not just, the summer.
Well, Mr. Bichette asked for a continuance for a consideration of his concerns on the next plan. And we want to talk about the restoration of the marsh. If I remember going to that house, there was marsh in front of the larger of the two homes. I don't see that included in the restoration plan.
It's
The area that we are showing is the best available information that we've had, and that was what we survey located with the date of June 26th of this past year.
and there's still grass there. I'm not sure. about
No, I was
that,
thinking, there was grass up to your wall,
but up to the.
underneath the deck, underneath the house, where the slats were. I have pictures of grass going
Yeah.
that far in, so, and I
Right,
don't
and
see the
s-
restoration indicating that.
Right.
But Mr. Bichette has asked that this be continued for reconsideration of the concerns he has. Commission?
Can I ask you a question first?
Yes?
So the concerns then are saying that there won't be anything considered beyond the existing approved parking areas under the filing from 2016? That's it? That's all that will be considered on the property?
For the parking areas, yes, Mr. Leggett?
The reason why you feel that way is because partially you're correct, because what you show is the pre-approved one.
Mhm.
This board probably wouldn't even approve that now.
Okay. Well,
So
that's
It's not
still,
like we're taking anything away from you. We're
I
actually almost,
understand. I don't
It was
mean to be, I'm not
pre-approved,
trying to be
so-
aggressive.
Okay.
I'm trying to be compliant. I just,
I know. Okay,
you know.
in the swale, that 4 foot wide, it's, like I say, you can go 16 inches in stagger block. And that's gonna just get down about this below your lowest foot of the floor, your joist. And then you can come back up with, like 1 inch, 3/4 inch stone. And I think you're gonna be surprised. You're gonna have no buildup of water there.
oh,
And as far as the snow, that's still gonna go up over that 4-inch curb.
I'm just thinking of doing it once and attempting to do it right.
But we're trying to help you basically try to get around these certain things. Like I say, if you go with a pre-existing one, which I doubt very much it actually, this board would actually approve that now if it came in fresh. Dave would be better off on answering that one, but I think that would be pushing, just getting that, what's already been pre-approved. And like I say, just up in the corner there where it's the deepest, you know, where you're gonna have to, you wanna get the earth off of the wood,
All right.
you know.
And there's
You
about a
start at
foot and a
16
half
inches and you
there.
come up about close to 20 stagger block. I don't think you'll have any problems.
I mean, it's not too far off from what we're saying. I'm just trying to tie it all
Well-
together.
You've heard the commission, you've heard Mr. Pichette.
Is it possible to separate it from the other sides of the project, to
Well-
approve other parts of the project?
Before you came in, we were discussing that we could take a look at what else was being requested on the plan and approve those components, being the seawall, the proposed walkway, and there would be some discussion on the proposed deck, being everything beyond, above and beyond the 2 parking areas that seem to be giving us all a little heartburn.
Right.
No, I wouldn't be opposed to breaking it up like that at all.
I'm just worried
That
about
way
the
you can get
winter.
something started.
I'm not really in any rush for anything except for the access to the house, because, like I said, I do snow, and I don't want to wrestle it. Just personally, I'm being a little selfish there. I want to.
But if you were to come back with,
House.
as Mr. Leggett suggested, a smaller retaining wall to prevent the soil from coming up against your home,
I'm going to try to
and
come up with something.
leave the 2 parking areas as previously permitted.
Can I ask you a question about that? So that permit, from my understanding, is still valid, if it was from 2016?
Yes,
So do
3
we-
years? Yes.
So then, basically, we could just remove that from the plan if we're gonna separate everything, if that's, the maximum that's gonna be allowed? I mean, it doesn't have to be re-allowed, is from what I'm...
No, just that by putting it on the plan, everybody understands the area that has already been previously permitted.
Okay,
So it's no question as to what has been approved. And remove the other things that are being proposed so they're not visibly on the plan.
so would there be consideration of a retaining wall that would attach the previously approved parking areas from, say, one corner to the other, and still be able to try to mitigate some of the stormwater? And
We're still talking 3 walls. It's 3 separate walls.
Well,
I would just like to try to combine them for functionality.
but we are concerned about the soil that is piling up against your home.
Right.
So
I don't know how to get my
take a
thoughts
better
out of my
shot at
mind.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we try to move forward with anything?
Shall we?
Okay, you guys clear basically what we'd like to see?
Yeah, I'm just curious if we can maybe, I don't know how this works, approve the other, we'll work on the parking areas, but the other areas that I assume the board is fine with, can we make some progress there? Can we separate it somehow?
Can't separate it out of...
This existing
this-
plan.
Yeah, you got to come back with the revision, and there's going to be, under this application, there's going to be 1 order of conditions issued. So it's either going to grant everything, including the new seawall and the revisions as requested by the board, or it's going to approve the project as far as the seawall and deny other things that they don't want to see. So,
Can we approve everything except for the parking area, and we'll reapply for the parking area under a new permit?
that's up
For
to
next
you if
week,
you
for
want to
next
do that.
meeting?
So then I'd have 2/3 of my project approved, and then we'll decline that, and then we'll just start another
Could very
hearing on
well
just
be.
the parking.
There hasn't been a discussion on the deck yet.
Right.
So that's still something
That's-
to be discussed, so,
That's my largest
yes.
concern.
The deck, the walkway, and the seawall, I believe, are items outside of the parking area. And maybe the retention, small retention wall to, or ditch to prevent the dirt piling up, but not the parking area.
I
So
agree with
take
that.
another swipe at it,
Yeah, I'd like to
and
separate.
just show
it,
the
yeah.
existing parking that's been approved on a plan. So there's no question as to what can be done at that site for parking. Okay?
I
So I'll
understand.
take anything else? Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to continue.
10 or
You guys
17.
are all clear now?
Yep,
to 10.
yep. Continue, a motion to continue to 10:17.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor? Opposed, abstain?
10:17 or?
10:17 is the next meeting.
Okay, I thought you said 19. My ears.
Okay.
Did-
Yep.
Can I
Yes,
just ask
sir.
one question real
Yes.
quick? If we agreed to remove everything besides the deck, walkway, and seawall, could that be voted on and the rest, and then we could just submit a revised plan removing all this
Start over from
stuff
scratch
in the
on the other part.
adjacent to the road? So that at least a portion of the project can progress in a more expedited manner than waiting another few weeks for a permit to be issued and then an appeal period?
Well, they just continued it.
We have continued it.
Okay.
So bring in a plan with those items that do not include the parking structures. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to keep a set
I
for
have-
yourself?
I have a set, thank you.
About one of the...
I have a set, yeah.
Fine.
So, Alyssa, please.
Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for James Bernard, 98 Edgewater Drive, Wareham, Mass. 02571, to create a walk-in closet addition for property located on Assessor's Map 15, Lot 1000A, 98 Edgewater Drive, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Anybody here for that hearing, please come forward and identify yourselves.
I'm Jim Bonner, and this is my wife, Deanne Bonner.
I didn't either.
Okay, Mr. Pichette will read.
Your butters.
Oh, do you have any, the green cards, the butter cards?
Yes.
You never know when you have them and don't have them.
Well, usually I don't.
The post office lost one, but they gave me a copy
Okay.
of the one they lost.
It's not as if you have a lot of,
Do you want me to bring them up to you?
yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because they gave me a site plan as built.
Okay, we have,
Oh, yeah, we don't have that. but
we
I'll
don't
take
have
it.
that one. You'll take it?
Is this your only copy? Yeah, why don't you hold on to it then?
Yes. Okay.
Project site is at 98A Edgewater Drive, and the project involves proposing an addition within the buffer zone to a coastal bank at this site. Previously, the commission had issued an order of conditions at this property for a project that approved in addition to the existing dwelling. And in that order of conditions, one of the conditions was that there was to be no further expansion of the structure towards the coastal bank, and that was to be an ongoing, continuing condition. This proposed addition that's in front of us is proposing to move that addition close towards the coastal bank, so therefore would not meet the condition. So as I discussed with Mr. Bonner before he submitted the application, I would have to recommend that the commission not approve this additional space to be added to the house because of the previous conditions that were issued.
Anything you'd like to speak to? Would you like to speak to the project, please?
I'd love to speak. Thank you. Thank you for having us. We do wish to add a small addition to our house, which would be a walk-in closet off of our bedroom. This was not included in the original plan with the house, and Deanne's going to tell you how come that happened that way.
I'd like to just give you a little bit of history about how we happen to be here today. We decided in 2012 to start looking for a house in which we could retire. And we were purposely looking for an old house that had some waterfront. And we found a very decrepit house that was really quite decrepit.
Just a bit.
That we thought we could actually restore, and we were quite excited about it. Before we made any offer on the property, we met with the Wareham building inspector and asked if we could do the proposed renovations to the house that we thought would be necessary for us to live in that house. He said yes to that, and he put that in writing to us. And we spent the following year working with both architects and engineers to revise the old house. In that year, Wareham fired their building inspector and hired a new one. And 2 days before the work was to start that had been previously approved, the new building inspector came out and said, you cannot do what we gave you previous permission to
This
do.
is after we'd spent more than $30,000 on plans and engineering and architect.
At that point, our home in Acton was already under contract. And we were left in a position of needing a house very fast to be able to live in. The solution for us became to add a modular house to the one room of the old house that we were going to be allowed to save. And we did that. But the planning for that house was very hurried and very pressured. Our design, the previous approved design, was for us to have one floor living because we were looking at our retirement and the possible need of care of one or the other of us. At the very last minute, the modular house designer said to us, well, you'll really need a bathroom that is wheelchair accessible. And we said that was a good idea. The modular people took all the space for that wheelchair bathroom out of the bedroom. And the closet, the bedroom closet, and we never realized till the house actually arrived by truck onto the property how much space we'd actually lost. We thought that we could probably live with this situation, but as both of us are getting very close to our 80s, it is much more difficult for us because our clothing has to be kept in closets upstairs, and we have negated the one floor living that we had. I'll turn it back over to Jim to tell you a little bit about the detail of what we'd like to do without harming anything about the wetlands or anything that was there previously.
So we are proposing an extension that goes out 6 feet and would be about 15 feet long. This addition, I think you have a page, and I highlighted the addition in yellow. In the original plan, the original criteria for making a decision about our house being on the lot. The problem is that it's close to coastal bank, and it turned out the old house that we ended up tearing down was 7 feet 2 inches from the coastal bank, and the new house at its closest point is 8 feet 2 inches from the coastal bank. So that criteria was used to say it's okay to have your house. Had we proposed this at the time, the addition is now more than 16 feet from the coastal bank. So according to the original thinking about how we were granted to be able to be near the coastal bank, this would have been approved in the first place. The trouble was, we didn't know we were going to do it. We did come to David. He said, no, we've been trying to live with it, and it's getting harder for us. We think that we're going to, because it's only a closet, there's no additional environment, taxing on the
Impact,
septic
right.
system or anything like that. And the plan would be to have sonotubes with Bigfoot, so there'd be minimal digging in the ground. Wouldn't be a full foundation, just have it be on sonotubes.
Rob?
Why do you always start with me?
Okay. Joe, I start with you.
Well, now we know what happened to that old building inspector. I can see basically what happened before, and I'm gonna have to actually go with our agent on this one, especially where it's written down as a ongoing order of conditions. The old house, yeah, it might have been in there, but I'm looking at total square footage and what was taken out versus what was actually put in with a new addition and stuff like that. So
Even with the
that's-
addition, it's less square feet.
That's the reason why you were allowed to do that, even though you were still within that work area, because there was a net gain as far as conservation when it comes to the square footage. That's the reason why.
I'm sorry.
It's not for a debate, I'm trying to explain something.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, because when I did the square footage of what we have, even with the addition, is still less than what it used to be.
That's what I'm saying, that's why you were allowed the original time to go into that.
Originally.
Okay.
But the standing order of conditions say no more for a specific reason. That was the stopgap, you were allowed to do that new addition. You know, I'm sorry to say that to you, but I just want to let you know exactly what's going on here.
Okay, Alyssa?
No questions.
I was with him, I just didn't want to say it first.
No, it doesn't sound nice, but I'm sorry, but that's just the way that's the way it is. We have to
Accepted.
stop, otherwise people want to keep on going more and more, and it's then.
And it may have nothing, the next step may have nothing to do with you. It might be
The next
10
person.
years down the road, or then it would be a precedent. Okay, you had a standing order, you got rid of that, you allowed something else, so can you get rid of it now and allow something else? And
Well, my understanding in those kinds of situations are that they're taken case by case, and each time a request is made, the impact of that particular request is what the judgment is made on.
I mean, I wasn't here when that one came in, I'm relatively new, but I believe that they looked at it with that, would have looked at it with that intent, and okay, this is a one-shot deal, we'll look at it on this one case by case, but in order to stop it now, we'll put a standing order of conditions that no more. And we're on the other side of that coin. The no more has passed.
Right.
Anybody in the audience for or against this project? Seeing none,
Motion to close?
I have a motion to close.
Second?
I have a second. All in favor? 400.
Aye.
Okay,
And this is a negative, Dave, what would this be?
It would have to be a positive determination.
Negative? Because we're not going to allow this, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate, but thank you for your time.
We're
Thank
sorry.
you.
I have a motion for a positive determination on the project. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Thank you for coming in.
Got it. Notice of public hearing. Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6, a public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018, at 7:15 p.m., on the request for determination of applicability for John Ward, care of Travis Landscape Construction, P.O. Box 1748, Sagamore Beach, Mass. 02562, for a new fence installation, resurfacing driveway, new back deck and steps, and new patio for property located on Assessors Map 1, Lot 384, 32 North Boulevard, Onset, Mass.
Thank you. Anybody coming forward, identify yourself for the project?
Hi, good evening. Michael Frazier, Travis Construction and Engineering and Weatherstone Restoration Representative.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Bichette, I'm set with that.
They have the green cards.
Yeah. Do you
I
have the
first
green
want to
cards?
apologize for the fast sketch, but we were told that it really didn't require
Oh, yeah.
engineering plans.
Okay, we have the green cards? Yes, we do. Okay, Mr. Bichette will read, please, on the project.
The project site is at 32 North Boulevard in Onset, and this is an after-the-fact filing for the construction of decks and regrading within the buffer zone to a coastal beach and also within a coastal flood zone. A 4 by 15-foot deck and an 8 by an 11-foot deck have been constructed at the site. The closest is approximately 50 feet to the coastal beach, and this is within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. The coastal beach is on the other side of the road from the subject lot. In the rear of the lot, there's a low concrete retaining wall type structure that was also installed and then backfilled with gravel material. I did have a question about how much material has been brought into the site. Also, there was a question about the driveway in terms of if there was any future plans for surfacing of that. I would recommend that this be a pervious material in terms of the driveway. Generally speaking, I didn't have a problem with the project, so I would recommend approval of it with a negative determination number 2 with the condition of a pervious driveway. And again, this work has largely already been completed.
Mike, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think Dave's actually accurate. I think I tried to talk my client into putting in a gravel driveway and not an asphalt driveway. I told him it would be a give and take because he wants a small patio area for his 80-year-old mother that's been living there for 90 years, well, her mother before, I guess. So the family's been there for, I think, 90 years. The house is being totally rehabbed on the exterior with new doors and just trying to bring up the neighborhood, which every house on that road is doing at this point. The front walkway would just be a brick walkway. The granite curbing would be put back that was there. There was existing granite curbing there. We just moved it, put it aside, and it's going to go back in. And that's pretty much, it's just a very quick, simple little job. The concrete wall that was put in was replaced. There was a block wall there that it was falling down and impeding on the back butter. And so we put in an 18-inch, which falls under building code, just to retain the area so that we wouldn't be transferring water onto another property, which we can't do. So the material that we brought in was a mixture of the sand that was existing from the driveway, which was a grayish kind of sand, and a little bit of 3/4-inch dense grade just to bind it up a little bit. And that's pretty much it. So there's no big plantings going in there. We're trying to keep the nitrogen loading down because there's only, I think, maybe 20 feet by 4 feet of lawn on one side of the house, and that's pretty much it. And I think the rose bush is going to go back in that belonged to his mother that we have at the nursery right now.
Questions? Joe?
No, I disagree with the agent as far as the pervious surface on the driveway.
You don't want stone?
Stone, that's pervious.
Well, all right, I understand that, but do you want asphalt put back in?
No, I says I want, not pervious.
Okay. So,
Okay, and Alyssa?
Is the job all done?
well, no, ma'am, there's probably about a week's worth of work there. There is a fence, a custom fence that the customer bought. It's been stockpiled there. I mean, there's probably about a week's worth of work there left. It's a very simple project.
Rob?
No questions.
Anybody in the audience for or against? I have a question. How do you start it without a permit?
Well, at first, we were trying to get an express permit, and we were just going to do the siding, and we had concrete front stairs and a concrete back deck area, and we just thought if we stayed within the same footprint, there wasn't going to be a problem.
Now,
But the new decks are not within the footprint.
They were expanded, I'm not saying they were, I'm not being naive.
Yeah.
Yep.
now, if the client's mother is living there, I see nothing to accommodate any type of ramp should she go to a wheelchair. Everything is steps.
I understand that, ma'am, but his mother comes down on the weekends with her two twin sons that are colonels.
So she doesn't. Okay. Now, if I take a look at the front deck
Yeah,
facing the road,
yeah.
you have these, 4x4 posts going down on top of sonic tubes?
No, I think they're 6x6s.
Okay, 6x6?
Yep.
Do you realize that one of them is not on a sonic tube? It's hanging in free air,
Then yeah, ma'am, because that one wasn't put in yet.
but the deck is in.
Yes, ma'am, but a lot of times we build decks and then we put the sonotubes
Sonotubes.
in for the proper elevation. A lot of times builders put in sonotubes and they're always off-key. We don't do that. We're engineers. So we'll frame something out, temporarily frame it up and get it up, and then we put our sonotubes in and adjust the,
I guess the question
the
is, how do you
cleats.
build a sonic tube? How do you dig a hole underneath the deck that already exists?
well, how did we build Deer Island? And I was one of the guys on that.
Never mind.
I'm just saying.
I was not happy, if I took a look at the back of the property,
Yeah.
standing with my back to the house, looking on the right side, near the back corner, there's a tremendous amount of erosion by your concrete blocks that were placed there.
There's erosion there, ma'am?
Yes, if I'm standing at the back deck,
Yeah,
looking at the back wall,
yeah.
over to the right corner, there's a lot of erosion in that area.
Okay, well, I haven't been on that site because we were ordered and red stamped
Yep.
off that site
Yep.
over 30 days ago. So, I mean, that
Which
would be,
means if there's erosion now,
there wouldn't be erosion, ma'am, when it's cured. We haven't finished the wall or any, small drainage on the top of that, which would be 3/4-inch drainage stone. The filter fabric's there, but if it's eroding over in that corner, it's got to be very minimal.
That was after that major rain,
well, it's still, the dirt went someplace, I don't know where it went.
project wasn't finished.
So, all right, so, and there will be a wall will be placed all the way around the back of the house?
Just from right to left of the fence. If you look,
There's a green fence there now. Will that be covered with a new wall?
there's no green fence there, ma'am.
What's the color of that?
There's a white fence to the right, and then there's
No.
and then there's a chain link fence to the back.
And what's the color of the chain link fence?
It has some
green.
strapping in it, I don't know what
What-
color it is.
Okay, that's what I was referring to as the
Okay.
green one, because that, when I looked at that. Where will the new wall fence be placed?
It'll be it'll be right on top of the wall, so it's right at the edge of the wall on his property.
Okay. All right. So, anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed.
Okay, I'll make a motion to grant, but before that, this is normally finable because it's after the fact, but basically, the approvals that were given, we would have given anyways. So I'm gonna go without the fine, but I'm gonna go with a -2 determination and condition with the pervious surface on the driveway.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, before you do any work, please see Mr. Pichette before you go back there, and I think you now have an issue with the building inspector, because there's a cease and desist sign on the door? on
That
the
is
house?
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
No. This. Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in Room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Savory Brothers, care of JC Engineering, Inc., 2854.
She's supposed to be.
Sorry.
Pink one?
I'm here for Maple Park, which was the next one up. I'm sorry
Was the
if I jumped the
next one
gun.
Maple Park?
I had this in my order, but
Okay.
whatever you want. I'm sorry.
I was just going in the order on the agenda.
You want Maple Park, yeah. JC Engineering, Stephen Dorff,
No?
that's it. Cape Cod Maple Park.
Campground?
I got it.
Excellent.
You got it, okay.
I've got it. Cape Cod Maple Park Campground, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571, to install a water main for property located on Assessor's Map 127, Lot 1000, 290 Glen Charlie Road, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
Okay. Mr. Pichette?
The project site is at the Maple Park Campgrounds off of Glen Charlie Road, and the project involves the installation of water main pipe in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and within the riverfront area of the Agawam River. The site is also within the estimated habitat of rare and endangered species. Approximately 800 feet of water main pipe would be installed from where the road crosses the Agawam River to the campground headquarter area. A 5x8 concrete vault with valves and a meter pit would also be installed in the road area as shown. The water main is proposed within the existing dirt entrance road. And the work would involve trench work for the pipe installation, which would have to be approximately 5 feet below grade. The road does come very close to the edge of the pond, so some of the work would be, the limit of work would be approximately 6 to 7 feet from the edge of the pond at its closest point. Silt fence is proposed along the edge of the road for the length of the pipe installation. 2 new fire hydrants would also be installed as shown on the plan. At this point, we don't have comments received back from Natural Heritage or a DEP file number, so I would recommend a continuance of the hearing at this time to the next meeting, which is 10/17.
Bob, anything to,
Well, Madam Chairman, with respect to, since it's going to be continued for those two reasons, and
You'd like to-
Mr. Madden is much more familiar with it than I am, and so I would just accept the continuance.
okay, any questions from the board before we go for a continuance? Seeing none.
Just pass it on. My question would probably do with the dewatering that's needed there.
Sure, there is a dewatering detail on the detail sheet. It's the,
Oh, then, my bad.
Yep, no, that's okay.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to continue until,
Motion to continue
10:17.
10/17.
I have a motion,
Second.
I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay, we'll see you or Bill or somebody next meeting.
He's passing it
Probably
off.
both of us, I guess.
You probably have another project anyway.
Well, it keeps us busy.
Thank you, so that Maple Park is continued.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. On the notice of intent for Vincent Perrone with GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Mass., to remove existing enclosed porch and construct an addition for property located on Assessor's Map 50A, Lot 297, 27 Wildwood Ave, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering.
And we have the green cards, and Mr. Bichette will speak to the project.
The site is at 27 Wildwood Ave in the Swifts Beach area, and the project involves the construction of an addition in the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and also within a coastal flood zone. An existing enclosed 8 by 16-foot porch is to be removed, and a 12 by 23-foot addition is proposed in the same general area. The addition would be approximately 50 feet from the edge of the wetland. The location of the addition is within the existing lawn area of the yard. There's no grade changes proposed. Erosion control is proposed between the work and the resource area. And I would recommend both silt fence and hay bales be used for the site. I did notice in looking at the site, there was a lot of trash and debris in the adjacent edge of woods on this site, so I would recommend that this be conditioned to be cleaned up before the project commences. We did get a DEP file number for the project, so I would recommend the approval of the project with the standard conditions, the added conditions for the hay bales and silt fence, and for the cleanup of the trash and debris along the wood line.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We certainly have no objections to cleaning up any debris that's in the area.
Okay, anybody in the audience speaks for or against this project? Please come forward. I'm seeing none. Questions on the
Motion to
board?
close.
Questions on the board?
None.
No?
None?
None.
None. Okay, now,
I changed my mind, I'm not closing. Motion to close.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400.
Make a motion to approve with standard stipulations and add one of a silt fence in addition to the hay bales and to clean up trash before starting the work.
And afterwards?
It's a normal one.
Okay.
So I have a motion. I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained before you start the work? Please be Mr. Bichette to make sure your order of conditions are completed. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Massachusetts, on Wednesday, October 3rd, at 2018 at 7:15 p.m. on notice of intent for Savory Brothers, care of JC Engineering, Inc., 2854 Cranberry Highway, East Wareham, Mass. 02538, to install an alternative septic system, grading, and construct a retaining wall for property located on Assessor's Map 19, lots 33, 37, 8 Franklin Street, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brad Bertola with JC Engineering.
Thank you. As if you knew I was going to ask you for your name. Thank you. Mr. Bichette?
Okay, so again, the project site is at 8 Franklin Street, and the project involves upgrading a septic system in the buffer zone to a coastal bank and within a coastal flood zone. The existing cesspool at this house is to be replaced with a new Title V nitrogen-reducing system. The new leach field would be approximately 73 feet from the top of the coastal bank, which exists across the street from the subject property. The site is also within coastal flood zone AE elevation 14. It's also proposed to change grades at the site as shown on the plan. This would involve filling the site approximately by 1 foot to 2.5 feet in certain areas of the site. I did have a question about the volume of fill material that would be needed to be brought to the site. And there was also a question about the driveway. Would that be constructed in the same general area and the surface for that? Hay bales are proposed along the edge of the property and the street to contain the site. As far as the DEP file number goes, did we get that one?
I don't believe we received it yet.
No, we didn't get the DEP file number for that, so I'd have to recommend a continuance at this point to the next meeting.
Anything you'd like to add?
We have no issues with the continuance. I did speak with the client today, and the driveway would be gravel. It's in the same spot as the original driveway that's located to the south of the existing dwelling.
How much fill you're going to need to bring it up?
I would have to calculate that before the next hearing, but it is 2.5 feet or so at the highest point in the backyard. It's a raised system due to the shallow groundwater, so that's why we need the fill to bring the grade up.
Any questions before we continue?
No.
I had just one quick question. As far as the fill to the adjacent lots, do you think there's going to be any issues there with runoff onto these lots, or are they pretty much consistent with, elevation-wise for the site that you're working on?
Well, this site is basically the trap of the pond in that area.
It's the low point?
Continuously floods.
Okay.
Rumor is the neighbor to the north has maintained the grades in the road. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but the road grade is elevated between the Locust property and the beach across the street. So maybe it's trying to keep the water out of the street. And I know that the property owner has said that the property floods, specifically in the driveway location.
All right, nothing
Is
else?
this Agawam Beach?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else before we continue?
I have no questions.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to continue into 10:17.
Make a motion to continue to 10:17.
Second.
I have a second, and a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? We'll continue into 10:17.
Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., on Wednesday, October 3rd, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. on the notice of intent for Stephen Dorr, care of J.C. Engineering, 2854 Cranberry Highway, East Wareham, Mass. 02538, for site alterations including planting beds, retaining wall, and sod for property located on Assessor's Map 125, Lot 2, 250 Barker Road, East Wareham, Mass.
Thank
I
you.
am the property owner, Steve Dwar. Good evening, Brad Bertolo, J.C. Engineering.
Thank you. We do have the green cards, so Mr. Pichette, please.
So again, the site is at 250 Barker Road, and this application is being filed as an after-the-fact filing for some unpermitted work that had been conducted at the site. The Conservation Commission had previously approved a project at this location, which involved the reconstruction of a dwelling and deck and the reconstruction of the existing patio and retaining wall in the buffer zone to Glen Charlie Pond. This work had been completed, and the commission issued a certificate of compliance for that project. Since then, additional work has been done at the site in the buffer zone and within the 30-foot no-activity zone along the edge of the pond. And this work involves landscaping activities, the reconstruction of a retaining wall along the edge of the pond, the installation of granite steps, and the installation of an irrigation system. In reviewing this, I would recommend that the commission evaluate this project in terms of determining what they would have allowed had this come in and been submitted to them before the work was done. So some of the new features that are within the 30-foot no-activity zone that would not have been approved should be required to be removed and the site returned to its previous condition. This would include areas that were sodded in that area, removing the landscape areas on the west side of the house and restoring that to natural vegetation and condition, and restoring the block retaining wall into the deck in its previous configuration. Other features that would have been allowed, such as rebuilding the existing retaining wall along the edge of the pond, installing the irrigation system, and doing landscaping work that's outside the 30-foot no-activity zone should be approved, as those would have been approved anyway. I did have a question about the source of the water for the irrigation system. Is that being tapped from the well?
Well, right now, it's set up to work from either the lake or the well.
Okay, yeah, because really it's not acceptable to be pulled from the pond. So that would just have to be set up so that it was drawing from the well. So I don't have any further comments other than, as I stated, in terms of what the situation is there currently.
Before we start discussion, I just want to acknowledge again, as I did during the RDA meeting back in July, that I apologize for doing this without a permit. We had a bad winter, if you folks recall, a couple of nor'easters, one where we had winds over 100 miles an hour. In fact, my neighbor down there lost a trailer. A big tree came down, took out a trailer. We lost power, things like that, where they had to redo the pole and things like that. And it caused a lot of erosion. So that's what prompted this project to start off with. So the retaining wall along the water was badly damaged. I know in talking to Brad, some of you did a site visit this week, and you saw my neighbor to the west had what looked like a new retaining wall. That was a replacement. Hers got blown over too. I mean, they were literally white caps. I was down there. It was bad. I have a pretty steep pitch that goes down to the east side of the house where that block wall under the deck is, and that constantly washed out and will go into the lake. I could not get the grass to establish, which is one of the reasons I did sod there. As you probably know, sod's expensive. I did sod where I could afford to do it around there to stabilize things. In fact, there's, we didn't use sonotube, we used the precast footing for the deck. It was actually getting washed out around that. So I really wanted to secure that so that we didn't have problems with the stability of the deck. But nevertheless, we filed the permit. I hired JC Engineering. I want to make things right. You know, I'm here to work with the commission.
Thank you. Brad, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I guess, and I'm not sure if this whole commission has been familiar with the site. I do have some pictures I could submit that was submitted as part of the certificate of compliance request, just to kind of show the backyard and what was there prior. When Mr. Dwar purchased this property, this had an older house with a patio and basically I'm not going to call it a beach area, but a grassed area that went right up to the edge of the pond. As part of the original permit, he was allowed to reconstruct that retaining wall that was along the pond. And the reconstructed retaining wall shown in that pictures So I guess comparing what was originally approved under the certificate of compliance in the backyard, or pond side of the property, I'm hoping the commission can evaluate whether sandy area versus landscaped or stabilized grassed area, what would provide the least impact to the pond. Suppose there's arguments on both sides, but we're just, it's just one thought that the commission could think about in regards to that aspect of the project.
And specifically to that, one of the issues I've had is where there was sand, it would constantly wash into the lake. And I submitted pictures of that when I filed the RDA. So we would get water coming down the hill, go through the, over the patio and whatnot, and it would wash sand into the lake. My thought process there was that at least grass would stabilize that and stop things from washing into the lake. And we're talking an area that's probably 30-something feet wide by no more than 20 feet deep. That used to be sand, which has now got grass on it.
Any other comments on this? Okay, Joe?
I pretty much agree with what Dave says. Looking at the pictures, I'm willing to, I think, taking the sod out behind there would be causing more damage, really. I mean, but the other things, as far as, native plantings on the left-hand side of the house, that's in the 30-foot no-work zone. I want native species if you're gonna have plantings in there, and gas cans.
Can those be added to what's there? What I did?
No, you gotta take out the plantings that you did in the 30-foot no-work zone,
Okay.
and do it kind of a native way. The agent would be able to tell you basically what he would expect to be there, which was there originally. Storing of gas cans. I almost flipped out when I saw the storage of gas cans down there. Get them out of there.
I understand.
Get them out of there. Even when you're using them, I don't want them stored within that 30-foot zone. And the
problem.
other thing I would say is only slow-release nitrogen fertilizer on that other stuff. That's way too green what you got up there. Way too green.
That's just the sod as it was put in. There's been no fertilizer.
I know, but
I agree. Since I've owned the property, I mean, there's a big grassed area. You guys were down there. There's a big grassed area off to the right side of the house.
And I would suggest
Never
to the board to
fertilized.
go with a maximum fine of $300 for being an after-the-fact and all of this work that we wouldn't normally allow. That's how I feel on that one.
Is there the addition of changing the watering system to only one type of watering system?
We can-
Did Dave say that?
We can
Well,
condition that.
because you don't want it taken out of the pump.
No, we can condition that. He has you can do either the well or you can go either way. So
Right.
we condition that you do not pull water from the
Well, I
pond.
can eliminate it, yes.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Did you say that sod not being a native grass, did you say it was actually going to be worse to remove and put a native species in there?
Yeah, I don't see the benefit between the sand, taking the sod out and putting the sand there. I just don't see the benefit in doing that.
Okay.
One comment about the sod, I actually work closely to understand the different types of grass, and I put fescue in there, not bluegrass, which has deeper roots. Again, thinking about erosion
Yeah.
that we're dealing with.
How does it behave with the lower nitrogen?
So
requirement?
fescue is what they use on sports fields, I was told. So it's low maintenance. You don't really need to fertilize it, which is not my intention anyway, so.
Right, okay.
Okay. Even if you use your existing patio, you have yourself something that intrudes beyond what was approved for a patio and a fire pit.
Mhm.
It goes beyond the dimensions of the existing approved patio, correct?
It's, yes,
Yes,
It's de minimis, but yes. I mean, I've always had a fire pit there, but one that just sat on top of the ground. And I figured that was safer for people walking around if it was raised from the patio like that.
I don't remember seeing a fire pit on the previous plan. You just had it sitting.
Yeah.
What side is that? I'm sorry. The landscape to the west, is that what we're talking about?
Right.
You have steps, you've got rocks, you've got mulch, all within the 30-foot no-work zone. Is the recommendation, Mr. Bichette, that all that be removed and be replaced with natural plantings, including the steps?
Yes, that would be what I had recommended, again, because that wouldn't have been something that
We would
the
have
commission
permitted
would have previously
if we had
approved.
seen it ahead of time.
Could I comment on that?
Yes.
Thanks. There were rocks in that bank area. I think, Brad, you've got some evidence of that, or you've seen that.
I've got some pictures that show, rocks adjacent to the house.
To
But
hold
not-
that bank together.
But not these small little stones that are there now. I can
Oh, the
see,
crushed stone? Yeah.
yes, I can see rocks that are up against outside the 30-foot zone that seems to have been there for a while because I can see some grass and weeds coming up between them. But all that smaller stone, I'm not calling them rocks, I'm calling them
Gravel, yeah.
gravel, large gravel, small, and all the plantings for the evergreens and vines and mulch and fir trees, that's all above and beyond what would have been allowed if you had come to us for permission. So I'm thinking that everything on the west side of the house, within the 30-foot, is to be removed and replanted with native material. But that means all those stones those walkways come out, right? All those,
Well, I don't recall exactly what was there for access. On the as-built plan that we got when they submitted for the certificate of compliance, it doesn't really show anything over there, but I don't know if you have any evidence of something being there that people walked on, or if it was just people walked down the
We used to
hill, I'm
walk-
not
We would
sure.
walk up and down it. In fact, the original plan was to use the existing stones, and I had, I'll say, an overzealous landscaper who decided to use pieces of granite. I'm afraid if we take that out, then you're gonna have a real erosion problem, because that's where the water comes down. And that's why I was careful with that area. That's not mulch there. I could see taking the gravel out, adding either bigger stones there to prevent the erosion, and then obviously, as you've been suggesting, putting native plantings over there.
Yeah, and I think, Brad might have to kind of design or come up with a scheme to stabilize it, because obviously we don't want it to be in an eroding state. But again, on the other as-built, it shows sort of the bubbled out natural vegetation, which that's what I'm assuming how it existed from what I recall. But just as long as it can be naturalized as much as possible, but still stabilized, I think that's the goal, instead of having it look like you said, a landscape feature on the yard.
Would being so close to the house, obviously you want to maintain some separation. Would the commission be amenable to leaving a path, a walkway of some sort of stone or rock?
Yeah, I think there would have to be some means to get around there, so yes.
There was stones there. I don't think it had the granite steps that were easily traversable, walkable as they are today. It was a stoned bank. But
access down the side of the house, so leave the granite stones and then clear everything else out from west
How
to the
about
property line?
between the granite stones and the house?
Yeah.
Take out that gravel, put some bigger rocks there, if you don't like the gravel. Or leave the gravel there, then on the other side of it, that's where we're talking about native
Yes.
planting.
From
The
house to the
west
little
side,
gravel you
yeah.
have to the stone, for the steps, stays as it is, and everything west of that gets reclaimed for native.
Correct.
That's fine.
But yeah, you do need a pathway to get down to the water's edge. I totally understand that, and you don't want to find yourself eroding, and
I want to hold it together.
yeah, totally understand that.
I mean, that house faces north. We get the brunt of these storms.
I'm going back to the original as-built plan, and I don't remember seeing existing timber steps covered with carpeting to be removed and restabilized with crushed stone beneath deck. There's nothing on your previously planned that talked about putting down another whole set of granite steps on that side of the house. I mean, you never even, on the original 2014, had any steps going down to the beach on that side.
So the landscaper, he was actually just here, Travers Landscaping, who I used at the time, we kept washing out that bank, and I think you saw the property, how steep that bank is. It kept washing out. He came in front of the commission, I don't think he had an RDA, whatever, and asked to put steps in there. And they are on the plan.
You can see on the pictures I just submitted, you can see there were 4 individual granite steps.
Sorry, wait a second.
That was an original plan, but this was the as-built.
So the as-built added those,
Well, the as-built had these blocks. It did not have the current configuration of stones that are there.
okay, I was looking at what was originally submitted to us in September 5th, 2014.
Right, this is
and I
the
had
actual
nothing.
as-built right
Okay,
here. And
But
then
that as-built does not
reflect what's
reflect to
there.
what is there today.
Correct.
Okay. So we have steps going all the way down to a set of retaining walls by the deck that has not been in the plan. But I totally understand how they have to get down the hill.
And it also secures, as I mentioned in my opening comments, the footing for the deck right there was eroding out. So we took them from, if you look at that,
As-built
the
plan.
plan, we pushed them in right around that and secured
abut
it around there
To about the retaining wall underneath the
to
deck.
help the erosion issue that was happening there.
Okay. That answers my question, except for we have to talk about the sod that's between the house and the deck. And what do you want to do about the burn pit? That's the sod that's there now. You have a set of undisturbed piece of property in which you have storage of canoes and everything else?
Mm-hmm.
You expect, will that be all there all winter?
No, I can move that. In fact, that was put there as they were doing their work. Used to be on the other side.
Do you want to comment on it?
No, if he's going to remove it, then that's fine. It's not like a permanent structure.
It just sits
You can
there.
just pick it up and take it out. So as long as they're removed, then that's fine.
Okay. Then the question comes to the sod. That's between the deck, the patio, and the
The retaining wall.
retaining wall. Yeah, I mean, it looks nice, but
It's not going to
I-
stay
I-
that green forever.
I am very concerned that if it's allowed for this project, there would be other people that would want their front yard, their backyard, yard by the pond, also grassed in as opposed to sand.
That would be the most challenging.
Yeah, to keep
To
the
do.
sand from,
No, I can't keep the sand out, number one. And number two, to undo the sod and put the sand back in, you're basically talking about redisturbing everything. That's the problem with that. And to me, for, what was it, 3 years I've had the property, I literally go into the lake and shovel out sand and put it back onto the beach because it would just wash out all the time.
did I ask anybody in the audience want to speak to this project before, for or against? Okay. Anything else?
If the sod weren't there, if we just had sand, would there be any other alternative that would do the job? In other words,
Well, the sand would be below the height of the retaining wall, therefore it wouldn't be washing over Right now, it is sloping down toward, the land slopes toward the pond. There would have to be some removal of not only the sod, but a way to prevent the sand from washing over the retaining wall. Did I get that right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not happy with the sod being placed without, it would never have been approved to begin with
Right.
because of the closeness to the water and in the 30-foot no-work zone. And when we first conditioned the house, was it not a sand beach when they came before us with a water, what do you call it?
Yeah.
It was weedy sand.
Yes.
Right. Well, the pictures that Brad had showed what we issued a certificate of compliance for, and it was at the time just sand.
I cleaned it up, yeah.
Yeah, because when I went down in, when did I go down? September 2014 and took pictures, it was all sand.
Because I cleaned it up, yeah. In fact, the area that we've been talking about to the west, that used to be a garden. There's lilies there and everything. Things get overgrown. There was weeds on the beach as well.
But it isn't just the sod that's in front of the house, it's the sod that goes up the side of the hill, which is a concern because of erosion. So,
And I can tell you, that's washed out numerous times.
I think we have a picture of it.
We've tried, we've put that netting stuff down. We've tried all different things there. It's tough with the north facing on that house too, the weather that we get blowing into the house.
All right. I'm going to ask specifically about the sod in front of the house. Alyssa, keep it or remove it?
Seems almost that you have to keep it at this point. I
Can you
don't
go
like
up to the mic,
idea.
can you go up to the mic, please? Thank you.
I think that one would have to keep it at this point, but then again, I don't know the whole history of what the board does with situations like this.
Because the house next to it has a beach, and I'm sure they're going to ask for sod too. Joe, I know you would like to keep it?
I don't see the benefit in having them pull it out, to tell you the truth. And I'm gonna fine them for it anyways.
I would prefer to remove it, but I have no other option to.
That's right.
What do you, I mean, do you leave it walkable? Do you put in
Bushes?
2,100 blueberry bushes?
Yeah,
What do you put there?
that's exactly my question.
Is there a native, no-mow, low-growth kind of
That grows in the
plant to
sand?
put in there? Where's Sarah when we need her?
Yeah.
I did try to put a variety of grass that would be
Rosa
low maintenance and have
rugosa.
deep
Yeah.
roots. Honestly, I did.
Rosa rugosa grows in the sand.
Yes.
I
If you don't mind the
I
prickly.
know it's not native, but my parents at one point had a bank that they
That
put,
Picture that he had
you know,
from the
like
as-built.
a blue rug in, or, it grows this high, you don't have to do anything to it, but it's not a native plant, so I
Right.
can't, but that's kind of what I'm
Brad
thinking in
had,
my
can you
head,
take
I
that
just
back?
don't know what to put there.
See that little, that goes 4 inches.
Could it be stepped?
This being the way it was, I don't see how this would wash out. This would be left. You know what I mean?
Clover.
We're looking at
Clover
pictures
grows
that
in
you provided
sand.
us with the as-built.
Yes, that was the
where there-
COC request pictures.
Yes, so where there was a wooden retaining wall there that divided the sand area from the rest of the yard.
That was just some 4x4s. It wasn't really a
But
wall. It did divide it.
divided, as opposed to removing all the sod within 30 feet,
Mm-hmm.
which was one option,
Mhm.
because you put it, or we say you return the front of the patio to what had been there when you got your as-built permit.
And then we're back to an erosion problem. I understand where you're coming from. I get it. And I honestly didn't want to spend the money on the sod either, but I saw that as the best option of controlling the erosion.
And I understand what you're saying, Sandy. If one person does it,
They're all gonna want it.
everybody's gonna want it, and then
They're
you're
gonna
gonna
do
have
it after,
major.
they're gonna do it before we
after-
approve
right.
it and after the fact, and no, you can't, you know,
Nitrogen,
well, then,
with the fertilization that'll go on, fertilizer.
but in this picture right here, there appears to be several inches from the height of the sand and the height of the, it was the wooden retaining wall
Yeah.
before you put in the metal wall, right?
Well, it's granite now.
Well, granite, sorry.
For those of you that visited the property, when you drive down the gravel road, the private gravel road, when we get rains, it's like a river, and it comes straight at my house. So even where, the way it was before, even if you have a few inches of separation, the water just overwhelms that sandy area and blows it into the lake.
Would the,
I don't see how that would happen.
would the stop point be at the road? The edge of the road and the lawn?
There's no way to divert the water. It's got to go around my house somehow. That's the problem.
Or,
And we pitch things when we put the house in and everything to do that.
or slow it enough to have it not do damage, but
I've been, I wish.
then what, but then what do you get? You get, a series of, of hay bales.
So you just go back to that.
The problem is that area that we're talking about to the west pitches in towards the house. It's almost like, and if I were to change the pitch of that while I was redoing the vegetation, it would go into my neighbor's house.
Right, which you can't do.
Can't do.
Right.
So there's really no other route for the water.
Yeah, you don't even need any of that, just put it back to that, it's not a huge area, you know?
Okay,
Can it,
do you wanna see the picture as it is today and what it was?
sure, but could it be, could the sod be plugged with a native species that will eventually overgrow the sod and, do you see what I'm saying? That way you don't rip anything out, you just give it some competition and hopefully the native competition wins over time. And then that way
Kinda like
nothing's
a
ripped out.
clover mix or something like
Erosion is
that?
never caused. And, I mean, because you leave a field to fallow and you start getting, woodier plants and then you get the, you get the primary forest and a second, and a mature forest. And so, so if you have, you know what I'm getting at. I just don't know what to,
I totally understand, to remove it would
it's-
cause damage to remove it.
yeah, at this point,
You
removing it
would
is
give
folly.
yourself, it would go back to erosion and washing into the pond. To keep it sets a precedence that I do not like. To
Right.
keep it means it's subject to more nitrogen because
Yeah.
it will be fertilized.
Can we put this portion of this on hold until we ask someone who could come
Whether or
up?
not there can be additional plants introduced into the sod that could very well, in its time,
Right,
replace the sod, I guess is that what,
therefore you never get your erosion, you eventually
we
go
wouldn't-
back to native.
but we
and
would never even have allowed planting of clover or anything else in that
I
area.
understand that, but we're
Yeah.
past that point.
Yeah.
And-
This was a kind of
and
a
what we wanna
pre-existing
do-
site, so it's not like it was
Not really.
all vegetated 30 feet of woods when
No,
he
it
bought
wasn't.
it.
No,
It was,
no.
we're looking at sand
Right,
or some type of stable,
but we also
So-
need to stop the process of having this done without a permit and then
And
coming in
here,
and going,
Joe?
no, I understand that, I'm not arguing that.
yeah, we kind of need
We just,
at the same time, we're trying to come up with a solution to not just your problem, but to the bigger.
Do we want to get the grass further away from the lake? Because Brad, you might have an idea.
If we created a buffer off of that,
So you would take out maybe 2 rows of sod?
take out some of the sod and have some other alternative
Maybe gravel.
gravel or,
You can't put mulch there, you can't put,
Okay, so I guess
Talk to me.
the question is, if, let's
Have them
say,
come up and
let's say
look
you
at
draw, you know, 2 blocks back, you put in gravel, what would and assume that there's no erosion coming through there, what would naturally fill in that something's gonna
I was
grow?
gonna say probably poison ivy.
You had poison ivy
Poison ivy
before.
is actually a very healthy, it's a primary plant. It's what moves in first, stabilizes ground, adds, adds woody material as it dies and lets something else move
You're
in.
not gonna get erosion
So health-wise,
this way.
environmentally,
Run off
health-wise,
from the side of the house.
poison ivy is a wonderful plant.
Not gonna do anything with this.
You know what I read? It's not even native. Someone brought it over from Europe. Who would bring it over, but,
Can you come up, take a, well, you and Steve come up and take a look at this. Right at this particular point, you have found a way of identifying the area in front of the patio by putting some type of retaining wall here and here to keep it from flowing back into your grassed area, right?
this was pre-existing before he bought it. This was.
it was refreshed, but that, there were timbers there.
There's timbers that lined
The
that.
problem here, as we go back to this side over here, the water comes down. It doesn't go that way because of the grade of the land. It comes into here.
But then, see, those retaining walls,
Doesn't stop it. It goes over the patio into there. I don't know if you have the RDA pictures I submitted. There's pictures of sand that I had in the water, going in the water, and this being all washed out. This side, not so much of a problem. This side, more of a
but
problem.
I'm
This side will
thinking,
wash out.
by
here.
doing something like this, you can keep all the sod from here up to your 30-foot, and remove the sod that's right in front of the patio, and except for maybe the first 4 feet, remove the sod between the seawall, the wall and the 4 feet back, and keeping the rest of this sod. Would that be a compromise?
Because
I'm concerned about the sod going right up to the water, I really am.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we take a couple of rows of sod out there, put
Mhm.
gravel there. So now we're not right up to the water. I'll be honest with you, these really do nothing. You know, that they were aesthetic, there was sand versus grass.
But if you would,
But putting them back is not going to change the runoff issue
Well,
that
yeah.
exists.
you're from here to here, but from here to here, your sod is at a different depth. You won't have a definition between your sod and your gravel. Would that be an issue? But this would all be sod up through here, and it's only this area would be cleared.
Yeah, we could just go straight all the way across till you hit the vegetated area.
Which would take out some of the sod that
Yeah.
extends up to the tree line.
Mhm.
Small,
That-
10-foot area there.
Where your gas tanks are.
They were under the,
They were
Yeah.
right, they were right in there.
They're under that little square.
No,
right
they
there.
were, in the
no, that was the pump.
That was,
That
Pump.
needs to get removed that we were
Okay.
talking about.
so that was
That's
the
what was
water
sitting
pump?
there, yeah, so
Oh.
when I pulled the dock out, it was near the dock, I pulled that out.
Okay.
I didn't need to have it removed.
All right. Some ideas. Can we continue the hearing? You come back with a plan we can build to that shows what you're gonna do to the west side of the house and what you plan to do in front of the patio?
that seems acceptable.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah.
Because we need a new plan.
That's understandable.
And what about the fire pit? Yea or nay?
Gotta go with nay.
Just,
No,
it's just,
I mean,
it's just
it wasn't-
The fire pit.
right there.
I mean, just to,
Where's my picture?
He came and asked, it wasn't, those are the ones.
I mean, how many
See it?
feet do we have there, do you think?
Yep. That's your plans.
5, it doesn't bother me. but
Okay,
I just-
doesn't bother you. So it's,
Oh.
what are we gonna do to the west side of the house, and what are you gonna do in front of the patio
Well, along the edge of the pond, I guess.
and along the edge of the pond?
That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of sod. That's 4 feet. Aren't the sod about 12 inches
No, they're
wide?
Probably, what are they, 18s or 2 foot, 24s?
Yeah, so.
3 feet?
3 feet.
Well, whatever, 3 rows of sod? Well, you don't want to cut it, do you?
Somehow it's gonna get pulled up, whatever it is,
Mhm.
roughly 3 feet, we'll say.
Okay, and come back with the plan and let's take a look at it.
And as he draws these plans, so we discussed this already.
How big is that? That's like,
It's like 20, 20.
That's 14.1.
3 feet isn't gonna do you much. I
Well,
think
3
that's
feet.
good.
No, 3 feet will get us, well, back to here.
This was
I don't think so.
originally, it was the layout of the original wooden retaining wall when we first started the
Yes.
project. And it was all grass on this side, and they had actually tried,
Well,
if you remember, this was was that the steps that
Nope.
had that fake
Brad.
grass that went over it?
Brad.
All the way down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
You see that fake, it
Yep.
was all steps
Yep.
with like fake grass.
Yep.
With grass right
Cloth up,
down to
yep.
the side there, so it seems like he's willing to go straight across, not just
in front of the patio, but all the way,
But,
just to
you know.
make a, yeah,
to get between the brush line.
okay.
Basically the length of the retaining wall.
Yeah.
Okay, so give us another,
And then on this, it's, if I understood correctly when we had the discussion on this, it's from here to here where we had the issue.
yes, within the 30 feet.
Don't mess with this.
Don't mess with
There's some of
that.
the existing rocks I was
Yes,
talking about.
that's what I said, that
right?
had the weeds in it, and keep your walkway, but do something with,
Yeah.
naturalize the 30 feet.
Which means pull out the cedars that are in there, I think. Is it Joe, you said? The cedar trees over here.
We just wanted, I'd end up having to make a motion to have you go through Dave with the planning schedule anyways.
There might be some species that are suitable.
Yeah,
others
cedar
not.
doesn't sound too bad to me, but it's the
No.
other stuff. It's not supposed to be landscape
Right.
within that 30-foot zone.
There's
It's gotta be-
probably, on this side over here, there's probably like 20 cedar trees,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to the road.
Did you get rid of the poison ivy that you had there?
I'm just gonna, it's me to deal with. Poison ivy's over here, but I'm
So,
dealing with
We
it.
don't need to get into
Gotta go.
discussion of every single plant, do we?
Okay,
Yeah.
no,
All
so,
right, let's save it.
shall we, we're going to I'd like to have a motion to continue until 10/17 with a revised, with a plan for restoration.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Continued until 10/17.
And just for the record, for Brad and myself, we're going to propose a gravel strip where the sod is,
3 feet from the retaining wall,
and then we're gonna have a plan to revegetate the west side.
beyond the existing granite steps. Is there anything else, Mr. Pichette?
And I know I need to remove the pump, sprinkler
Water pump.
pump.
So where did they fall on?
Oh, and the
fire
gas,
pit?
gas cans in the canoe rack.
Yeah. Where'd the fire pit fall?
It'll more than likely stay. I didn't hear enough negative.
Yeah, I didn't realize how it was built. I just saw it on the other plan and
Yeah.
it just said fire pit. I
I mean,
envisioned
half of
something
it's
that
into the,
wasn't actually
yep,
what it turned out to be. So,
okay. Did we take a vote on the continuance? I think we did.
Yeah.
We're done.
Thanks for your time, I'm sorry for the aggravation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we're looking for something else. We had minutes from February 21st, 2018. I've had a chance to review them. What corrections I have asked for have been made, so if someone would like a motion for me to approve the minutes of February 21st.
So moved.
I have a motion.
second.
I have a second. Thank you. Okay. There's that. We have a certification of compliance for Jane. Goodbye, Mary. You have questions?
I do, but wait, are you adjourned?
No, we're not
yeah.
adjourned yet, we're almost.
Almost.
Um, Did we have a James Jackson certification of compliance?
Yes, that was for the construction of a home on 17th Ave. That project has been completed according to the order, so I recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for that project.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, okay. Now, it is late, folks.
We're not even gonna touch
I'm not
that
going to
first one.
continue is there anything for other business that you'd like to discuss? Because I'd like to put it all on hold until we can come back and talk about
Motion
changes.
to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.